The future belongs to service providers who innovate without limits. That's why the fastest growing service providers are choosing the NetSapiens platform. Visit netsapiens.com.
Hey everybody, it's Doug Green and I'm the publisher of Technology Reseller News, and I'm very pleased to have with us again Josh Whitehurst, Head of Product at First Orion. Josh, thank you for joining me today.
Thanks, Doug. Excited to be here. Yeah.
So the big headline, I love it, Stonewalling the Bad Guys. We're going to be talking about that. We're going to be talking about omnichannel identity and a lot of related issues. We're really talking about restoring trust and faith in a very valued communication system, what First Orion is doing to help you do that. But Josh, first of all, what is First Orion?
Yeah, good question to start off here. So First Orion, we've been around for almost 2 decades, right? And the entire intent of this company was created to first restore trust and voice by identifying bad actors, right? So we are an analytics engine first. That's where we started. And that analytics engine provides scam identification technology for tier 1 and tier 2 carriers. And we did that for a little over a decade early on in the early years of the company. And as we began identifying bad guys, we created a registry. And that registry was for good actors, good businesses placing legitimate phone calls to come and raise their hand and say, hey, I'm a good guy. Help me out, identify me, don't call me a bad guy. And from that, this concept of identity and omni-channel identity, to your point earlier, was birthed, because if we can identify bad guys, why could we also not develop net new technologies to better identify and authenticate good guys? So over the past really 4 and 5 years, we've proliferated this concept that we started a couple decades ago into this omni-channel identity construct that is doing just that, identifying the good, stopping the bad.
Now we're going to talk more about this a little later in the podcast, but briefly, what does that even mean when we say stonewalling the bad guys?
Yeah, and it's a good phrase, right? So we can get into a little bit more of the weeds on. I'm going to use terminology like end-to-end call authentication. It's a very important point. But from that technology, what we are able to do in real time on a call-by-call basis is take authoritative data sets from a calling enterprise and know definitively on a unique call event whether it's that enterprise calling or it's a bad guy attempting to impersonate that brand. And when we identify that it is a bad guy attempting to impersonate the brand and call any given consumer on an operating MNO, not only do I identify it, but we stop the phone from ever ringing. So with pure authoritative data sets that haven't existed before, right? So now we know, hey, X percentage of these phone calls we've identified as a scammer trying to impersonate brand A. And instead of your cell phone ringing or it going to voicemail and you still having an opportunity to engage with a bad actor, you're none the wiser as a general consumer or subscriber of a telecommunications network. Phone never rings, bad guy gets stonewalled at the edge of the network, and only the good calls from that enterprise are allowed to ring a phone.
All right. So that's the big picture that we're going to be talking about. So this is very exciting. Let's sort of start breaking it down. So one thing I heard when we were talking about our podcast today before we got on was it sounded like you is voice and text converging? Is that actually happening?
They are, very much so. So the advent of it, it's newer in the United States. There's more adoption globally of RCS, rich communication services, in the text channel, right? Mm-hmm. Coupled with the advent of these net new identity concepts in the voice channel, are giving birth to this ideology of continuity, right? So when we say convergence, when we say things like omni-channel identity and relevant to the voice and text channels, that's really what it's about, is making sure that good actors have brand continuity when they outreach to the general subscriber or consumer base, across both voice and text channels. And historically, it's been a problem, right? One thing I always talk about is that trust has been eroded over the past 2, 3, 4 decades because these scammers, these bad guys, have taken advantage of technologies that have been in existence to defraud the general population. And as we've developed these net new technologies that collectively in the telecom ecosystem to identify and stop, and now we're talking about stonewall them outright, we've also given birth to these identity concepts that we can apply not only in the voice channel now, but also leveraging the RCS technology in the text channel as well, which hasn't been possible in legacy SMS.
So branded identity is now central to the experience. Is that right?
100%.
Okay.
100%, yeah.
And where does Stir Shaken fall into all this?
So Stir Shaken, it was rolled out with incredibly good intention, right? And Stir Shaken, I like to refer to it as an important first step because it helped the industry at large. Like the initial intent of Stir Shaken was to identify if a call was spoofed or not with a level of confidence, given way through attestation indicators on a phone call, right? And the core spec of Stir Shaken was written to do just that. Is this call originating from the number that it claims to be originating from? But what we've done past Stir Shaken, and this works in tandem with Stir Shaken, the technologies that we're talking about, is layer on net new value propositions that both the carrier network, the enterprise, and the subscriber or consumer that's receiving a phone call can benefit from, right? That Stir Shaken in and of itself doesn't supply.
And so we're starting to hear from you and others this idea of beyond Stir Shaken.
Yeah, that's right. The way I like to talk about beyond Stir Shaken, and it's a theme that's emerging, is for the reasons that we just talked about, right? There was a core intent for Stir Shaken to provide a singular authentication signal, right, in a phone call. But to advance the ecosystem at large, not just within the US, but at a global scale, we had to develop what I like to refer to as a broader trust framework, right? So trust framework giving birth to things like stonewalling the bad guys or identifying the good guys across a variety of these different communication channels. And that framework, that trust framework, it combines a number of underpinning technologies by way of end-to-end call authentication, which we should talk some more about, very robust upfront enterprise vetting, telephone number right to use and vetting. So does that calling brand actually have possession of that phone number at this point in time? That's an interesting problem statement that had to be solved. Branded identity that is present at the moment of a phone call and leveraging those vetting protocols to ensure that that identity is sound, pure, well-intended. The analytics behind the scenes that track for bad versus good behavior on the analytics engine side. And then, of course, after all this is in place, change management processes occur for a variety of reasons. We have to monitor ongoing behavior and ensure that everything we did up front and everything we're doing right now stays intact and is made whole for the lifetime of any type of outbound call program or text program. Right?
And meanwhile, the bad guys have AI.
They sure do. They sure do have AI, but so do we. Right. It's one thing to have AI to try to defraud people. It's a better thing to have AI to stop that activity on the other side of the house. Right.
So let's get into sort of the details and the mechanics. And I don't mind disclosing. I said, Josh, have at it.
Yeah.
Go for the technical. Tell the readers and audience what's going on here, how you're doing this.
Yeah. So let's talk about end-to-end authentication, because it's really the underpinning of what makes the magic happen in real time that most people don't see, right? But We're commonly in ecosystem conversations about how do you do this? How would I participate in this type of activity? What do I need to do to ensure that that authoritative signal is in place? What we are doing at its core, once it's laid out as a simple concept, and what that simple concept is historically, I haven't been able to take an authoritative signal from an enterprise who is responsible for initiating a call event, right? This is the unique difference in what we're doing in Stir Shaken, where that initial signal is coming from an originating service provider. I'm supplementing and enhancing that with a trust signal from the enterprise who is launching a call. So what that means fundamentally is enterprise A, pick any enterprise that comes to mind, doesn't matter, is most likely operating from a CPaaS, UCaaS type platform to launch their outbound calls. They might have a call center they outsource it to, but they're all using some sort of software to outpulse those call events. We have APIs or SIP configurations that can be natively baked in and are natively baked into a variety of those outbound call patterns. And what that integration supplies First Orion and partner companies is on every single unique outbound call event, that enterprise is giving me a set of authoritative data that says, hey, I'm launching this call right now. Here's where the call's going. And I take that, I tokenize it, and I wait, right? And I wait on the terminating side. And whenever I see a call event cross the network to a terminating carrier, what I do is a comparison, right? Does this comparison meet the values supplied by the originating enterprise in this finite time to live window? And whenever those match up, I definitively know now with pure authoritative data from that enterprise and what I'm seeing traverse the terminating carrier network, that it was in fact enterprise A that was calling Doug Green at this point in time of this particular day. And because I now know that, remember, I've already vetted the enterprise up front. I've already proven that that enterprise has the right to use those numbers. I've already vetted the content that they want to supply to Doug whenever the phone rings. So after I've proven that that call is in fact originating from the enterprise, I can put a branded name on the phone call. I can put a logo on the phone call. I can even put additional context, like a call reason, we call it, on the phone call, which is supremely valuable for a variety of use cases. But where the other side of the value proposition comes into play is when that token value does not match up. If I see a phone call come across a terminating service provider that we have this technology instituted with, now I know that enterprise never launched the call on a call by call basis. And whenever I see that, I can do a number of things to the call. I can obviously I would remove all the brand identity data elements that would have otherwise been present. But when the blocking solution is in place, that's where the Stonewall effect comes into play, right? That's when I now know I can block this call and never let Doug's phone ring because it was a bad actor. You know?
And I love that it's real time.
It's real time. Every single call by call basis, any phone number that is enrolled in the solution set, we are seeing this in real time, all day, every day. Yeah.
As we start to wrap up our podcast today, could you maybe give me an example of where a carrier adopted this technology and there was like a real impact?
Yeah, for sure. And I'll zero in on the blocking component because I think it's got irrefutable value every time it's implemented. We first rolled this out in early adopter phase, I'd say roughly 2 years ago, Doug. And those early adopters were financial institutions. As you would imagine, bad actors in the space most commonly target like vanity numbers on a financial institution's website, or you flip your credit card over and there's a customer support line. Anybody can go get a spoof tool and spoof those things. Right? So we rolled this out with a large financial institution, hooked in this call authentication infrastructure into their outbound call practices. And day one, we turned this thing on. And I'll give you an example. any given month, maybe that institution, it looked like they were out pulsing 1 million calls. What we found after that got flipped on is 10%, up to 20% on some days of those calls, it wasn't the enterprise. Those were bad actors that were actively in real time trying to impersonate them and successfully doing it before this technology was implemented. So after we flip the switch and this technology is on, immediately we're blocking 100,000, 200,000 unique call events on a monthly basis that would have absolutely rang the phones of real people like you and me. And a portion of those people, they can't tell the difference. I mean, these scammers are getting incredibly sophisticated. It's a big business.
Right.
So it's one thing to take a retroactive approach and go and notify people and freeze bank accounts or shut down a credit card, right? But there's nothing that beats proactivity like this. If you can stop the problem before it happens, the amount of value that is saved on both the enterprise, the carrier, and the consumer front is immense. I'm finding the use cases on a daily basis. Right?
Now, Josh, as we close up, we have this very large number of enterprise readers. Most of them have contact centers. They're obviously running into these problems, right? To try to collect money, appointment setting, all sorts of activities, customer service. What's your message to them?
It is, there's a groundswell occurring across the business ecosystem. And by the way, both large enterprises and the SMB ecosystem as well. SMBs are part of this too, of treating their telephone numbers and sender IDs in the RCS channel more like an asset to their brand, kind of like you would view a website with HTTPS protocols or cybersecurity elements within the business or emails. When you start shifting your mindset and viewing these ideas as assets, it changes the paradigm in the way that these businesses think about how they communicate with their customers. Because when First Orion onboards one of these types of businesses, we have to treat them as assets. I have to prove that you are who you say you are, and that the phone numbers that you were calling from or how you were sending messages to the general consumer base, that you have the right to do that from those phone numbers. And then the content supplied behind it, that you actually have the right to use the content supplied behind it too. And when you shift thought processes to, oh my gosh, I need to think about the voice channel and the messaging channel as pure assets internally, like I do other areas of my business, good things like what we're talking about right now start to happen. Right?
Well, Josh, I really want to thank you for joining me today. I understand you're going to be coming up real soon at SIPNOC.
I am. Yeah, it's an annual event in the DC area. The SIP Forum sponsors it. Fantastic group in the telecommunications space. So we'll be getting into more and more detailed conversation about topics that we discussed here and a little bit more. This omnichannel identity construct is piquing interest across the telecommunications space right now. So more than welcome, anybody out there. Happy to talk more about this.
And where can we learn more?
Learn more about First Orion at firstorion.com, right? Everything that we talked about. We have product pages that go way deeper than I just went on the phone. Now there's contact forms. I'm always happy to engage in any type of conversation here. And then the SIP Forum also has a website where they talk about a lot of these topics as well, with conference information where we dive deeper into these types of conversations.
Josh, I really want to thank you for joining me today. This is an ongoing topic. There's a lot to continue to discuss, but for now, thank you very much indeed.
Yeah, Doug, appreciate the time. Anytime.
Innovate without limits, scale without compromise, and never pay per seat again. Discover why providers choose netsapiens.com.